Yeah, so my people, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, where you are watching this video from. So I want you to take a moment and watch the president. The president seems to be understanding what is going on. He says some people are now betraying him. Na wengine wanampiga vita kisiasa. We don't know who are these, but most probably Rigiji, I think, is one of the people mentioned above when he goes to meetings, churches, and he says, you know what, Wakikuyu, you know, Watu, Watu, which is I can say is a tribal statement, but at the same time it is mostly used as a political statement of divide and rule. So I want you to take a moment and watch this video.
Kuna watu wengi wananipiga vita vya kisiasa. Mimi nataka niwaambie hawa wanaonipiga vita vya kisiasa wanipige mimi, wawachane na watu wengine. Na mimi nataka niulize, nikiwa mahali hapa leo, wale waliopanga njama eti kuna ununuzi wa mabunduki na hiyo njama ikazungushwa, badala ya kuenda mahali ambapo mambo ya mabunduki ya jeshi inafanyika kule DOD, wakaizungusha wakaileta kwa ofisi yangu, wakajumuisha huyu kijana katika hiyo njama, na dakika chache baada ya kutoka kwa ofisi yangu wale wakashikwa, dakika 10 hivi baada ya kutoka kwa ofisi yangu. Mimi nataka niwaulize maswali. Kama ilikuwa inajulikana kuna njama hii ya ununuzi wa mabunduki na ilikuwa inafuatwa, mbona walikubali hiyo njama iletwe kwa ofisi yangu, huyu kijana aingizwe ndani, baadaye dakika chache wale washikwe, na baadaye huyu kijana akauawa? We want to know. Kwa sababu mtu mmoja ambaye angetuambia, kwa sababu alikutana na hawa wakora wazungu pamoja na mageneral fake waliokuja kwa ofisi yangu, mtu ambaye angetuambia ukweli ni huyu jamaa wamemuua. Na mimi nataka niseme hivi, and I want to say this for the record. I am aware and I know, and it's obvious, that there is a huge scheme that has been orchestrated to demean and to destroy my office and to ensure that I do not get anywhere. That I know, and it is rather obvious. Those executing this scheme, this elaborate scheme to undermine and destroy my office and ostensibly to stop me using all these schemes, I want to tell them they may have the system. They may have whatever they have. But I want to tell them we have God. And the blood of this innocent Kenyan will not go scot-free. Na hii njama inaendeshwa, na mimi nataka kumwambia bwana DCI, tafadhali my friend, fanya kazi ya askari, chunguza, tafuta ukweli. Siasa wachana naye. Yes. Siasa wachana naye. Kwa sababu hii njama inaundwa ya kisiasa. for political reasons, the DCI is being used to undermine my office, to bring me down, and many of them are not even ashamed to say William Ruto will not be there in 2022, and yet they are walking around. This man lying here was my officer. Kifo huyu jamaa amekufa ni kwa sababu ya mambo haya yanayozungushwa. Na ndio mimi nasema kama imefika mahali hapa, njama inasokotwa, ofisi yangu haina uhusiano wowote na DOD. There is no deputy commander in chief. There is only one commander in chief. There is no relationship between my office and DOD. There can never be a relationship of procurement of guns around my office. What is this? Na sasa imefika hata ile njama ya kuuza ama kununua bunduki fake. Na haya mambo yote, wale waliohusika na huyo ununuzi wa bunduki na majenerali bandia hawaonekani. Ile inaonekana ni ofisi ya Deputy President. My friends, please, give us a break.
Who are Gen Zs? If you look at the Gen Zs, a majority of them, in fact, this group of young boys and girls, our brothers and sisters, are the same group that managed to get what we call free primary education and secondary education from the Kibaki era. Education is defined as the mechanism of transmitting civilization. So out of 10 young kids, these Gen Zs, 9 to 9.5 are civilized, in the sense that there are things you cannot lie to him or her, because he's well versed. Even if they didn't go to university, at least they can communicate, they can hear, they can see. They are civilized. Number two, remember, these kids were born in a very, very good period of time. And this is the era of what you call the information era. So they have access to all information. Remember when you and I were kids, the government will dictate what will be written in the newspapers, what will be said on radio, and what will be shown in TV.
Yeah.
But today, these kids live under what we call the third industrial revolution. And this is a revolution of internetive things and free information. So they are able to read and see. That's why when they are being lied to, they will tell the president, they'll tell anyone, you're lying. And they'll refer you back to the constitution. I'm so glad and happy to see that Gen Zs have made the larger group of the millennials and the X and the baby boomers now, at least they're starting to read. Because the Gen Zs, when you talk of the finance bill, they knew the finance bill page by page, my brother. And they have access to this information. Number three, if you look at their secondary studies, there is what you call literature or fasihi, where you start reading books. Now, I personally took time to even read the books they read in high school. If you read all the books that this age group read in school, they are all revolutionary books. And that is one thing people don't want to understand. You see, some of the books they read are books like Kifo Kisimani. There's one called Betrayal in the City. There's one called Mstahiki Mea. There's another one called Kigogo. There's another one, you know, all these books, they talk about bad governance, they talk about corruption, they talk about good governance, they talk about revolution, they talk about revolting. So these are kids who came out in a society understanding how governments should be run. And you cannot take that away from them.
Yeah.
And the last issue, if you look at these young people, you and I were very comfortable after school, to be very honest. When we left high school when Kibaki was president. And during Kibaki's time, Kibaki built the economy of this country, and no one can argue about it. Kibaki brought in a system where as long as you worked, you had money. All of us had money in the pockets. Even the person who was selling jugu on the highway had money because people had money to spend. And we were comfortable. At least you'll buy yourself, you'll open up a business. Banks were coming to us to give us loans, you remember. Banks were coming to our businesses to ask us to open accounts and get loans. Kibaki had many programs to uplift the young people of the country. But look at this younger generation. Immediately they came out of school, they came and met a very wild environment, economically, politically, and socially. These are kids who've gone through the traumas of things like the COVID lockdowns. So they found a very wild environment. And that also helped in the resistance. So when you subject people through what you call political exploitation, social degradation, and economic oppression, the only option is resistance. So this is something that was bound to happen. And the worst thing is that, I've told you, even the government, as we speak today, have still not updated the software. They still do not understand what these young people want. Yeah. These young people are not interested in having a dialogue. These young people are simply saying, do things in the right manner. You see, we are guided and led by our holy book in the country, and that is the Constitution for the country. Yeah. So what these young people are just saying is follow the Constitution. The things they're outlining, they're things that affect me and you. It's not just about them. And you know, I find it weird when the matured in the society think that Gen Zs are just fighting for themselves. No. You see, we live in a society where we were told our forefathers shed blood for us to enjoy this sovereignty, for us to enjoy this peace. Yeah. And I think our biggest goal in life, Obina, should always be to leave Kenya better than we found it. Better than we found it. At any time, even when you were growing up, your parents used to tell you, you need to work hard and be better than me.
True, true.
And as a country, if we understand heritage of Kenya, we need to leave this country in a better position than them. And because these kids live in the third industrial revolution, they are clearly seeing that you guys are going to leave us in a mess. And that's why they are saying, hey, you need to wake up. So I don't understand why the government thinks maybe people want to overthrow him from power and stuff. It's not about personal. It's about facts. It's about facts. And it's high time the government has to wake up. Because speaking from experience, you know, we have examples in Africa. I'll give you an example. A country like Egypt, the revolution started just simply the same way our young brothers and sisters went to the streets. And Hosni Mubarak chose to shoot those kids. And it was the end of him. He was replaced by another one called Morsi. Morsi was even killed. And another person called Sisi, who was a general, took over power till today. When you talk of a country like Sudan, the same thing happened. This young generation started protesting about the cost of living. What did he do? He decided to bring out the military to fight them and killed a number of them. They put him out of power. Up to date, that country has not seen peace. So we don't want to go in that direction. Talk of other countries. Talk of countries like Yemen. Talk of countries like Syria. You know, similar things happened in those countries. And we don't want to go into that direction. Because if we go into the direction of civil war and destroying this country, it is us who are going to suffer more.
To tender my unreserved apology to the country for either by commission or omission, everything that I have contributed into getting us into the mess and the place that we are in. I have reflected deeply the last few days, Mr. Speaker, and looked through my own journey as an individual and asked myself very serious questions, trying to wear the shoes of the ordinary citizens and how they feel at this particular moment about me as a person. I don't want to focus about any other individual, whichever office they occupy, but just me, a citizen of this country that God in his own wisdom granted the opportunity to serve in a place of responsibility.
take those two.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prof, you'll go down the history as the first minister to be vetted twice in one term, one presidential term. Of course, the others who are coming, but for now you are the first, and that history will not be, will be there forever. And I'll take you back to what you said in the Senate, that history is replete with strong and powerful dictators who are brought down by the power of the people. And I dare say you've been brought back here to this vetting by the power of the people. I want to refer you to an event because you are a member of the National Security Council. This is the core of the security of this nation. I want to refer you to an event in history in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis, something I know you are much aware of because you are an international law student or professor. During this time, the then president of US, J.F. Kennedy, had a standoff with the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev. And there was an EXCOM committee members, comprising of 14 members, almost akin to what we have here as the National Security Council. All those 14 members agreed that to deploy. It took J.F. Kennedy brother's advice to do otherwise. I'm not asking you to be consulting your brother, but if it were not for the brother's advice, then we could have experienced the first nuclear war to the destruction of the world. Now, I look at the events that have happened here as a result of either good or bad decision of the National Security Council. And just like somebody said, that there is always an inclination towards consensus, even if a decision is bad, that the committee of people could easily incline towards psychological consensus to the destruction or to the results of a bad decision. Does National Security Council of this republic also suffer from groupthink? Groupthink in a way that there is no devil's advocate to give an alternative decision making that can save the country. Then, Speaker, if you may allow me the last, very brief. You've tried to explain the donning of the uniform, the police uniform. What surprises me, Prof, is that you give instructions to police, you give press conferences, you are adorned in the uniform of the police. But when it comes to the crimes committed against humanity by the police, that's where you say the police are independent. How independent is your uniform?
Itafika wakati tutataka kukua president wa hii taifa. Mkitoka hapa muende kwa Wakikuyu, mtapata wako na kura, wako na pesa. Mkienda kwa Wakalenjin, mtapata wako na kura, wako na pesa. Na nyinyi unaenda kuomba, unaomba pesa, unaomba kura. Nani atakupea? Nani atakupea pesa, tena akupea kura? Nani? I want to tell the governors, wale governors ambao mko hapa, hawa watu wanaitwa toto. Msipowapea biashara, mtatafuta mtu wa kuwapea pesa, mtapata. If you don't empower the local entrepreneurs, the reason for a devolution is for you to empower the locals. Tafutia hawa vijana wafanye. Mimi sitaki kuona Muhindi anafanya kazi hapa Kakamega. Mimi sitaki kuona Msomali anapewa tenda hapa Kakamega. Pea hawa vijana bwana.
8 kabla ya saa 8 Eldoret City.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8. Unaelewana hiyo?
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8. Anguka na Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8. Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8. Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa ngapi? Saa 8.
Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8. Eldoret City 8 kabla ya saa 8.
Anguka na
Anguka na
Oh, finally, thank you so much for watching this video. and itakuwa siku gani? Itakuwa Thursday ama Tuesday? Leo ni tarehe ngapi? I think it is on Tuesday, tarehe 8 mwezi wa 8 2024. Don't miss on the street. Ni nini inaendelea? We are saying the president, you have to dissolve the government because we no longer trust you. But I don't really seem to see this thing having any weight. Reason number one, you can see President William Ruto is already out in his campaigns, you see. And we are here talking about nane. I don't know. Can somebody nichanue kidogo? What is this that is going to happen on a nane? Maandamano, kungoa Ruto kwa kiti, ama kudestroy properties, occupy State House, occupy JKIA, return. What is the specific theme of nane? Somebody tell other people to understand, so that you don't need to go to the street if you don't know what exactly is going on, because utapigwa ridhe, ukipigwa risasi utakufa kuu, na ukikufa tumekusahau. And remember, it is the kind of people we need in this country to grow this nation. Unaelewa? So before we talk about nane, we need to know what we exactly going to do in the streets. Unaona? And one of the most thing nimelearn from the people who have understood what is so called revolution. There was a pastor, I think I'm making that video. There's a pastor who said, this is not actually the first revolution. We're not doing anything new. And actually, what we're doing is a photocopy, you see. But the real thing, the real revolution was done by the Mau. Those guys who stayed in the forest. Yeah. And they ensured that, you know what, the British, you must go. And that was the theme. You must go. We are not getting out of the forest until you go. And now, something I've realized, when the European went, when the colonies left, they did not leave Africa. They handed over to black what? To black British. The power was handed over to the terrorists, the African terrorists who call themselves leaders today. Yeah, and that is why every time somebody gets to power, when they are not in power, they are good to people, they speak sense, they criticize, they are speaking the mind of the people. But once they get to power, the narrative changes. It is us now begging him. So, because they are not serving your interest, they are serving the interest of their bosses. So, guys, before we think of changing, before we think of revolution, before we think of going to the streets, the first thing we need to have in mind is the design of change that we want. How do we want this Kenya to, which kind of revolution that we want, and how do we want it? Have the exact picture, you understand? So that we have those people who are not coming to the streets. Just like 1963, the people who took over power, they were not Mau. They were not in the forest. When the Mau were in the forest fighting against white supremacy, the Jomo Kenyatta, and other leaders were not in Kenya. They were in Berlin, you see. So when the British were about to left, they called them and they sat down and negotiated on how this power is going to be handed over. So we need to understand which kind of revolution that we want, which kind of change that we want. If we don't understand which kind of change we want, we will never achieve it. We will not have a theme that is going to put everybody together. And without this togetherness, then you are likely to be defeated in this movement. So mark my words, and make sure you be safe. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.